So I'm not trying to be a bragger, but I have this belt, which I bought around the time my mum died in 2007, and I need to actually get a new, smaller hole punched in it. So listen on to discover my 3 easy principles for eating for a healthy waistline in menopause, even though I'm 53 and have type 2 diabetes. Two things that normally don't go with healthy waistlines. Okay, so welcome to Joyful Eating, episode 247. And this week we're talking about principles for eating for a healthy waistline. But the best bite I had recently, first I have to share this with you, asparagus season here. It's one of my favorite vegetables. It's also really good for gut health. So I go mental on asparagus season. I actually have some growing in the garden this year. So I've had some of that, but I've been supplementing with, there's this farmer that comes to the farmer's market and he just sells these big bunches. They are like the most pristine asparagus. Last weekend I had an asparagus weekend, so we had friends over for dinner, and I had my Irishman roasted chickens in the wood-fired oven and some spuds, and then we also roasted some asparagus, which was really good. And then the next day I had more roasted asparagus with poached eggs, which I love, and pine nut mayonnaise. So just basically get mayonnaise and then chop up some roasted pine nuts and stir that through. And it's just one of the best sauces. It's really good with fish too, but just with asparagus and eggs, it's the business. And then I also put on some nutritional yeast flakes, which I love that combo as well. So yes, that's what I've been loving in spring. Okay, so in this episode, I'm going to share with you our plan for today is first of all, I'll share with you these 3 easy principles for eating for a healthy waistline, even in menopause, even if you've got type 2 diabetes. And then I've got a bonus non-food related principle for you, and we're going to share a microscopic habit so you can get started today. The 3 principles I have. First one is, and this is really the opposite of what you hear from all nutrition, basically. Everyone's always talking about what you eat. You need to be eating more plants or you need to be eating carnivore or whatever. I, on the other hand, approach nutrition from the principle that how much you eat is way more important than what you eat. And the reason I know this is because I've always, pretty much my whole life, been a fairly healthy eater, right? And lots of veggies, lots of protein, all the good stuff, lots of home cooked stuff, not much processed food. But my weight used to be a problem because I was eating too much. And then it wasn't until I learned to listen to my body and get that quantity piece right that my weight kind of came into line. And that my waistline also stopped expanding. And the other reason I know this to be true is because I've helped hundreds of people in the Naturally Healthy Club. And one of the first things I tell them is we're not going to change what you eat. We're just going to focus on changing how much you eat. Sometimes some people do because they're excited. They will start eating some more veggies and cutting back on the processed food. But mostly everyone they stick to what they're currently eating, whether that's a lot of processed food or not so much, but they adjust the quantity. And when they do that, the weight magically takes care of themselves and their waistlines get happier and healthier. So that's our first principle. Second principle is to minimize carbs, but don't obsess. So you can still have a healthy waistline eating carbohydrate, right? And that's one of the delights of so many people is, oh, I can have croissants and still lose weight. I can have toast for breakfast and still lose weight, because remember, it's how much we're eating. That being said, if you do, as we age, our insulin sensitivity decreases. And so that means that it makes it harder to get that quantity of carbohydrate right. So it makes it harder to eat the right amount of carbohydrate. And it means that we are more likely to put on weight around our middle when we do eat carbohydrate. So you can still have some, but you want to just keep it to the minimum that you need to be satisfied and to enjoy your life, because the less carbs you eat, it's better for your waistline. And also it just helps with appetite regulation as well. I remember a few years ago, I decided to do a celiac test because 2 of my aunts had been diagnosed with celiac like late in life, like in their 80s. And I was just like, oh, I'll just get that checked out. And to do the test, you need to actually expose yourself to gluten. So I was like, oh, great, I'm going to have sourdough week. But by the end of I think it was 2 weeks actually, by the end of the 2 weeks, I was like, oh, get me back to being low carb, because I just really noticed that it was harder to feel satisfied when I was eating a lot of carbohydrate. So That's second principle. Minimize your carbs and just include it. You don't have to go keto. You don't have to do anything crazy, but just keep the portion sizes as small as you need to be satisfied. So you don't have to cut out potatoes, but just, do you really need 3 potatoes to be satisfied, or will one small one do? And just experiment with your quantities. That being said, some people, if you do have really good insulin sensitivity, there is no need to minimize your carbs. But for most people, when you're over 40, there is some, even if you've had good blood sugar control earlier in life, it tends to start to slow down as we age. And the way you know that if your insulin sensitivity isn't great, you put on weight around your middle. So if you're someone who, when you put on weight, it goes on your butt and thighs, then this probably isn't so important for you. But if you like, if I put on weight, it's on my tummy, then definitely that's the carbs one is important. Okay, and then principle number 3 is eat as much protein as your body wants and needs. And the reason for this is that protein is the most satisfying macronutrient, right? And as we age, our body's requirement for protein increases. And that's been well documented in nutrition research. And in fact, in the Australian dietary guidelines, they have one like level of protein intake for most of the population. And then for over 65s, they actually recommend a higher amount of protein. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But protein, getting enough protein is really important for appetite regulation. And there is a theory in nutrition that, and I haven't looked recently on the research around this, but there's a theory that our bodies are actually, because we can get carbohydrate from different sources. We actually can store carbohydrate in our bodies, we can store fat in our bodies, but we can't really store protein. And so there's a theory that our bodies are looking each day to fill up their protein requirement bucket. And if it doesn't, then that keeps our appetite switched on. We're still looking for food. So that's why you can be eating a lot of carbohydrate, but you're still hungry because your body's like, hang on, we haven't got the protein building blocks that we need. Let's keep looking for food. So getting enough protein is really important for that feeling of satisfaction. And then of course that helps avoid overeating, which helps with the having a healthy waistline, even in menopause. And I think the other reason why getting enough protein is really important in menopause is your protein, like our hormones are proteins. They're made from protein. So if you're deficient in protein, it makes it harder for your body to do what it needs to do to get the proteins, make the hormones that it needs. So that's my 3 principles. So how much you eat, way more important than what you eat. Minimize carbs, but don't obsess about it. And number 3, eat as much protein as your body wants. Literally, how to tell if you're getting enough protein is, are your fingernails growing? If you've got strong, healthy fingernails, they're growing well. If your hair's healthy, I know for me, the number one sign I haven't been having enough protein lately is my hair starts falling out. It's kind of uncanny how that happens. So, okay, cool. I know, keep up the protein when that happens. And then in terms of my bonus non-food related principle for a healthy waistline, I actually recommend not trying to exercise more in order to have a healthy waistline. And the reason for this is whenever we add more movement, our bodies naturally adjust and our appetite, and so we end up eating more, right? Also to compensate, so we don't actually get any weight loss benefits. And there's a lot of research around this that increasing exercise does not lead to weight loss. It can be helpful for maintaining weight. And I certainly know from my experience of when I was training for a marathon, the Sydney Marathon, I was running 90 kilometers a week. It was a lot of running, and I was trying not to eat more, but my body was just hungry. And so I actually didn't lose any weight, even though I'd done massive amounts of exercise. So the reason I recommend not exercising more as one of the principles for having a healthy waistline is that if you're thinking, oh, I should be exercising more, and then you're not, you kind of use that as a reason to, oh, well, so my weight's going to be a problem because I'm not able to, or I don't have the willpower, or it's not the right time for me to exercise more. So it becomes this kind of excuse. And also, if you're thinking that you should be exercising more, it takes the focus off the food, the amount of food that you're eating. And really, the amount of food that you're eating, that number one principle, how much you're eating, is the most important factor for getting you to having a healthy waistline. So it distracts you and puts pressure on to do something that isn't actually going to be effective. That's my bonus non-food related tip. And then my tiny microscopic habit that I invite you to experiment with this week is just eating your protein first. So whenever you're serving out, don't leave the protein. Eat the protein first, and then have the carbohydrate if you're having carbs or the veggies last, so that you've got enough space for the protein. Okay, hope you found this helpful. And yeah, I will catch you with a new episode of Joyful Eating for Menopause next week. Okay, bye.